All right, hey there, folks. Sorry about the technical glitch. I know I screwed up. It's my fault. My bad. Bad, Russ. Bad. Okay, I've been admonished by myself. All right, well, it's great to get back out there doing conventions and readings and seeing everyone in person again, and me not screwing up the computer. But since we can't go to all the live stuff, I figured I'd keep bringing Bookstore to you. So welcome to Russ's Rockin' Rollercoaster Season 8, Intriguing Interviews with Creative Minds. If you're like me, you can't seem to ever get enough of crime and mystery fiction, so I'm really excited to welcome tonight's guest, Lisa Regan. A member of the International Thriller Writers, Sisters in Crime and Mystery Writers of America, Lisa is the USA Today and Wall Street Journal best-selling author of the Detective Josie Quinn series. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
And thanks again for your patience. All right, now that we've got some folks here, I'm sorry, heads up to those of you who hung in there with me, thank you. I apologize again, but as a heads up, feel free to send any notes or questions you have for me or Lisa in the chat box during the show, and we'll get to a few at the end. All right, so as we always do, we'll start at the beginning. Lisa, so where were you born? Where'd you grow up?
I was born in Philadelphia and pretty much grew up there. I did go to high school in central Pennsylvania, came back to Philadelphia, then went back upstate for part of college and my graduate degree. And then I came back to Philadelphia.
Okay, so you're a Philly gal.
Yeah.
All right, so when you were growing up, brothers, sisters?
Oh my goodness. Well, we had a blended family because my parents got divorced when I was very young, and they both remarried to wonderful, wonderful people. So in my mind, I have four parents. And so I've got two stepbrothers that I consider just my brothers, and a half brother who, again, they're all just my brothers to me. So.
Right. Okay. So were you guys close? Did you guys get along?
I mean, we fought a lot.
Well,
fought,
Sure.
But yeah, we got along well. We got into some, shenanigans amongst ourselves, but we've always gotten along well. We've always had each other's backs.
So all in, how many are you?
Well, so it's three, but then three and me, so it's four of us. And then my dad and my stepmom also kind of fostered a couple of my cousins. So I consider them my sisters. So that's 5, 6. And then my stepfather remarried. He divorced my mother and remarried, and his wife has 4 children. So whatever that adds up to, there's a lot.
Okay. So in that whole, out of your whole crew, where do you fit in? Oldest, youngest, middle? Where do you fit in here?
I'm the oldest. Yeah.
Yes, as am I. Okay. And what's the age difference between you guys?
Well, we're all roughly 2 years apart. So it goes like, if I'm 45, then it goes 43, 41, and so on.
Okay.
So approximately.
Okay. So all right, so there's lots of parents here. What did they do? I'm always interested in what the background was.
For work, you mean?
Yeah.
So
they make their way in the world. Yeah.
Both of my mothers are nurses, which is incredibly useful. And my dad, my biological father was a truck driver, and my stepdad is an engineer, and he was also in the military. He was a Navy SEAL.
Huh. Okay, so lots I want to hear about all that. So I actually had, when I was growing up, I had a neighbor who was a truck driver also, right? He had the rig parked out front, and sometimes would be right on the side. So I'm assuming, was it tough? Was he was gone a lot, or no, or like?
I mean, he came home every night.
Okay.
Yeah, but it was a lot of long hours. He would leave the house early in the morning, and some nights not come home till 9 or 10 at night.
Okay, but no, so this wasn't like a regional or cross country.
He wasn't an over the road, no.
Oh, okay. And tell me about, so I'm sorry, I lost track who was. So you got a Navy SEAL in the family. Tell me about that. I want to hear about that.
Yeah, it was really interesting. I mean, it was out of the military by the time he married my mom, but those military habits, the structure, um, the kind of, don't wallow in things, just pick yourself up and let's go. Those sorts of things were just like part of his makeup after that. So, which I found incredibly useful because I was kind of a sad, quiet, shy kid. And I felt like the Navy SEAL mentality really helped me to a little come out of my shell a little bit, and also just never be afraid of anything, because honestly, like, nothing could be more terrifying than him when he's mad. So
Well, so maybe so did he serve?
yes, he did.
Where, I
Yeah.
mean, was he allowed? Did you know where in the world he was?
I No, I don't know. We weren't really privy. Like I said, that was part of his life before he met my mom.
Oh, I
Um,
see. Oh, okay.
so
Oh,
so we didn't have kind of a window into that.
I see. So by the time he came into your life, that part of his life was over.
Yeah, he had retired from the military.
Oh, I see. I see. I see. Okay. 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 All right. So, but what was that like though? So, like, talk to me about like, so what did he, you know, what did he bring to the table that, um, was a little, talk to me about like, what was that like to have what was that influence like? Like, what would he say? How did he carry himself? Um,
Well, for me,
right.
biggest teddy bear in the world. I mean, he was a total softie for me. Not so much for my brother, um, but he was very, you know, disciplined. If he was in the house, there was a lot of structure, and he would just kind of say things to me, like if I would come home from school and say, oh, something happened and it's just not fair. And
Right.
he would just very matter of factly say to me, well, life isn't fair. So you're just going to have to adapt and move on.
Right.
That sort of thing. And just this idea that um, giving up, if you really want something, if you're working toward a goal, that giving up isn't really an option. You just
Right.
have to adapt and overcome and keep going. And I feel like a lot of my inner grit kind of came from that example.
Really. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you described yourself as being kind of shy when you were younger. So what was that? I mean, so what, talk to me about like when you were young, like what were you into? What was your life like?
Oh, it was just reading. I mean, I just disappeared completely into books. My parents used to joke that if they were going to punish me, they would never ground me. They would, in fact, make me go outside and play with other children and
Right.
interact they used to say, oh, we're going to make you socialize with other people. So I just read a lot. I rode my bike all over the neighborhood,
Right.
and I was writing pretty much from the minute I could hold a pen. So it's like
Right.
reading, writing, riding my bike around. I had a couple of close friends and I just stayed in that circle.
Right. Okay. So when you were reading, what were you reading?
I read Christopher Pike was my all-time favorite as a child. And then I read the Sweet Valley High books, Babysitter's Club, Nancy Drew.
It's
Um,
interesting. Right.
yeah. And then when I got to be I would say around 13, VC Andrews was all the rage. And even though, like, looking back, it was completely inappropriate, my friends and I just devoured those books. We were obsessed with
I
them.
don't know those books. What are they?
The Flowers in the Attic is probably the
Oh
best.
yeah. Oh yeah. 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 I read that.
Yeah.
I don't remember it, but I know I read it.
Yeah, it's and I was telling my daughter about it because she was asking me the same thing, like, what were you reading when you were my age? And I said I was obsessed with VC Andrews, as every girl my age was at that time. And so I had to like go back. on Wikipedia and look at the plot because I didn't remember it that well. I
Right.
remember the basic premise, but that was about it. And I was reading through the synopses of the series, and I was like, oh my God, this is crazy stuff.
So just even remind me. So what was Flowers? I know I read it. I just don't remember. So,
Right. So it's this woman whose husband dies, and she's got 4 children,
right.
and she is not able to survive on her own. So she goes home to her parents who are rich, but her parents won't accept her children. So as a compromise, they lock the children in an attic, and they're not allowed out of the attic at all. And then over time, I forget whether it's the mother or the grandmother, but they try to poison the children.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay. That's right. Okay. All right. Well, yeah, that is dark.
it's dark.
Well, you know, it's funny though, I mean, not funny, but as the generations have gone on, what we were watching then, I mean, I grew up in the 70s and the 80s. And, when I go back and I watch some stuff from back then, and you're like, wow, they let kids watch that? Like, that's great. Like, I saw, Top Gun Maverick, I saw over the summer. My wife and I, we went, we loved it. And the thing is, and I mean, I'm in a total minority. I never liked Top Gun. Never.
Really?
Not really. It was okay, but I thought it was just sort of like, I didn't really get it. I thought it was overblown, but I said, all right, let me go back and watch it again. And I watched it recently. It's terrible. It's awful.
Oh my goodness, I still love it.
I know, but things it's so misogynistic.
Yeah.
and Kelly McGill's character, I mean, she is just basically just a blonde bimbo who's there.
Yeah, I know.
For,
Yeah.
music. But thing is, in the updated version, like the female character is so much better and so much different. Right. But I remembered now, and when I saw it again, I said, I think that's what I remember. It kind of bugged me even then, but I wasn't kind of mature enough to kind of realize why it bugged me. And that's
Right.
why it bugged me, is that it was so like women were just like playthings. And
Yeah.
even then, I don't know why, it just bugged me. But anyway, okay.
I would say that a lot of the stuff that my husband and I talk about this all the time, that a lot of the stuff that we enjoyed when we were growing up, if you watch it now, it has not aged well. And
Right.
We're like, wow, we can't believe that was acceptable. But it just shows you how much society has changed.
That's for sure. Okay. So, all right. So you were just a very quiet, introspective reader, kind of a, I don't know, just a quiet kid who had to be forced to go outside. And then you had this sort of blended family and lots of people around, and this sort of, this maybe kind of an authoritative, powerful figure in your life. And it kind of helped you sort of maybe come out of your shell a little bit, right?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, so, all right. So if I understand correctly, you were a paralegal at one point, is that right?
Yes, that was my last job before I started writing full time. I was a paralegal for a personal injury attorney.
So just curious, how did you get into that?
Well, actually, I had gone to graduate school for education. I started student teaching. It's the last portion of the program.
I did my student teaching also.
Yeah, I didn't make it through student teaching.
I don't blame you.
Because I was there in student teaching for 2 weeks, as were all of my colleagues, all of the people in my year.
What grades were you student teaching?
Secondary, so like 9 through 12.
Yep.
And I'm in there and I'm like, I'm not at all as committed to this as my friends are. Like, they were really into it. Yeah. And I wasn't. I mean, I enjoyed it and I enjoyed being around the kids, but I just felt like when I looked around at my friends and saw how much heart and soul they were putting into it, and I wasn't doing that, I thought, this is not fair to any children that I might teach in the future, right, that I'm not where these other people are. So I talked to the chair of the department, and I said, listen, I'll take the master's degree. I'm not going to get certified because I'm not going to teach.
Right.
And so I got my master's and I moved back to Philadelphia, and I had just had this time where I was unemployed and I was kind of desperately looking for a job. And the attorney that I worked for actually knew my dad. They grew up together in our neighborhood in Philadelphia. And so that's how I got the interview, because I was like, oh, Billy Reagan. And he was like, okay, come on in. And I started out as a secretary, and he didn't want to hire me at first because he said I was overeducated and overqualified. And
Right.
And I was like, yeah, I have these degrees, but I don't know anything about,
Life.
this law. I will start out just typing letters and I'll learn as
Right.
much as I can learn. And, I was kind of like, just give me a chance. I promise, I'll try to do a good job. And so he brought me on. And then over time, his paralegal who was there when I started, who became one of my best friends, she moved on. And then I kind of moved into that spot.
Okay. So for how long were you a paralegal?
13 years.
13 years. Wow. So
Yeah.
did you like it?
I loved it.
Really?
I loved it. Yeah, it was so challenging. And that was what really made me feel like I would get up every day and I would want to go to work. It wasn't like, it was stressful, and I wasn't like, oh, this is the greatest thing in the world, the most fulfilling thing, because I really wanted to write.
Right.
But I really did enjoy the job, and I enjoyed the stimulation and the challenge and talking to clients. I thought that was really a lot of fun and very interesting.
So was there, over 13 years, obviously that's hundreds or maybe thousands of cases that come in and out. Were there any that stuck out for you, or anything sort of thematically that you remember?
Just, it was always very interesting to me that some insurance companies, because when you personal injury, so when you have an accident, whether it's in a car, it's a slip and fall, or it's some other freak accident, you're not really suing the person, like say the person who was in the other car, or
Right.
the store that you fell in. You're suing their insurance company,
Right.
because that's where the settlement money would come from.
Right.
And it was fascinating to me that there are certain insurance companies that just will do anything not to pay out the claim. They'll spend more. Some of them are very fair. They're like, oh, you had a fracture. My client was clearly at fault.
Right.
We'll settle. We don't want to go to court.
Right.
And others they would spend, I can't even imagine how much they were paying their house counsel, or like the time that was spent on these cases, that it seemed like it was more than the case might have cost. And it changed over time. Like the companies when I first started who would do anything to get out of paying the claim.
Right.
Later on, over the years, their strategy changed. And then there were other companies that were, difficult to persuade, for my boss to persuade.
So let me ask, I've spoken now over the last several years, I've spoken to a bunch of private investigators who do a lot of this kind, they'll get hired on either side.
Right.
So either prove that it was, you faked it. I've seen a bunch of cases where they're like, oh, I hurt my back. And then he sits in his car all day and he waits for him. He's like, wow, he's got a landscaping business on the side.
Yeah.
So did you see a lot of that?
Well, we saw a lot of attempts to do that. I don't believe we ever had a client who was caught, lifting something heavy when they weren't supposed to. But certainly we would always get the surveillance video, and then I'd have to watch the whole thing to review it and see if there was anything really damning on it.
Right.
I know it happens, but in the time that I was there, I never saw anything that was really blatant.
Okay, fair enough. All right. So one last question on this. Is there any one specific case that just sticks with you, or any one particular client that just really stuck with you?
We just had, the one that stands out the most probably was this client who broke their finger. They went to the emergency room.
Right.
They had surgery. They operated on the wrong finger.
Oh God.
They put the pin in the wrong finger.
Oh, what a bonehead.
Yeah. And then they were like, no, we didn't. It it dragged on for months and months, and I
Like,
was
it's like,
like,
well,
"But
this
we're
is the
looking at
broke.
the
This one's
X-ray."
still broken.
Yeah, how can you, like, it clearly was not broken.
I mean, I would assume that your client won that one.
I believe so, yeah, if I recall. It was quite a while ago, but
Geez, I really hope so.
it was just funny the way that some things went in that business you think are going to be a slam dunk,
And they're not, right?
and they're not, which is it's that those were always the most fascinating.
Well, did they have Jimmy McGill as their attorney?
Who?
I'm from Better Call Saul.
Oh.
All right, just kidding. All right, so if I'm not mistaken, at one point in your travels, you managed a bookstore. Is that right?
I did.
Tell me about that.
Well, I didn't manage it on my own. I worked for a while, I worked at Encore Books in my old neighborhood, and I was not technically a manager, but I was a sales supervisor. So I was part of the management team. And then later I worked at Jean's Books, where I was a manager, but we had like a general manager, and then I was one of, I don't know, a half dozen managers. So because that store was so huge, and it required a lot of leadership.
So working in a bookstore is kind of like, a lot of men. It's the dream of many a nerd. But was it?
It
really,
is.
So what? Did you really? Was it fun? Did you really like
Was,
it, or was it just? Did it turn out to be just a job?
no, it was so fun. I was talking to the owner of Reads and Company, which is a bookstore in Phoenixville, the other night, and I said to him, I worked at Jean's Books in my early 20s, and it was just the time of my life. I mean, we just had such a great time. It was interesting. The people who work there were really fascinating and a lot of fun. And you don't really come to work at a bookstore unless you like books. So, so my coworkers were just incredibly awesome, and we just had just the best time.
How long did you do that for?
I think 2 years, and then I went back to college.
Right.
And then I just couldn't do it anymore. And shortly after that, Jean closed the store down.
Okay. All right. So I skipped over a question. We'll go back to it, but the transition is okay. So you wrote as a kid. You were always into reading. You worked at a bookstore. When did you really start getting into writing, like seriously? When did you really say, all right, this is my thing?
Well, I always wrote as a kid. I wrote as a teenager a lot. And then I would say, like, between 18 and 22, I'm mostly in college, and I'm still dabbling, but I didn't feel as passionate as I had in high school, but I still wanted to do it. And then I think it was, I want to say about 22 or 23, I was like, I'm going to write a book, a real grown-up book. Right. And I'm going to finish it. And just to prove to myself that I can finish a book. Yeah. And if I can do that, like, I'll see how I feel. And if it goes well and I'm happy with it, then I will kind of decide from there. And it was like the most invigorating, wonderful experience in the world. And I finished it, and I was like, this is really for me. Right. It's really for me.
Okay. So it's funny. I was at a convention just this weekend, and some guy came up to my table, and he's like, "Oh, this is so great that you're doing this. I just wrote my first book. It took me 6 years to write it. How long did it take you to write that first one?"
That first one I wrote in 9 months.
Wow,
well. Listen, impressive. I mean, it was crap then, and it's crap now. There's no salvaging that thing.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Fair enough. All right, so why crime fiction? I mean, there's lots of fiction, but why crime?
Well, I mean, I've read a lot of crime fiction, and I was always I was obsessed with Nancy Drew. They did a reboot when I was in high school. Right. And I even go back to, like, my childhood. My fascination was with Scooby-Doo, and then
Mystery Machine.
Yeah. And as I became an adult, I read a lot of, I was an English major, so I read a lot of classics and a lot of literary fiction. And then I just kind of moved on to crime fiction, and I really loved it. I just devoured everything I could get my hands on. And that just was kind of where it was for me.
Okay, that's fair enough. But as we all know, reading a genre and writing a genre are two completely different experiences. So, I mean, did you feel that it was just sort of, this is the world I want to play in, and I think I've absorbed enough and I can go for it? Or was it just, you know what? I'm not even sure. I just know I want to put words on a page, and it just kind of went that way.
It was the second one. I just had ideas and I would just start writing, and most of them I didn't finish. And then one day I sat down to write. I had the first line of the book was "first time in a bar." It was dialogue.
Okay.
And I sat down longhand and wrote 65 pages.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, oh, this is something. And that later became what would be my first published novel, which was Finding Claire Fletcher. But when I was querying for it, I can remember an agent told me, this book doesn't know what it wants to be.
Yeah.
Is it crime fiction? Is it romance? Is it literary fiction? And he said, you need to make a decision about this.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I looked at the book, I thought, if I cut out all this other extraneous stuff, that this is definitely, I think this is a crime fiction book. And that's just kind of been my thing ever since.
I had a similar experience. I wasn't quite as far along. I wasn't an agent. I had my first book. I was done with it, and I showed it to a buddy of mine, and we sat down, and also a writer, and I could tell he was excited about it, and I know I was jumping out of my skin, and we were talking about it, and I said, "It's a great book, right?" And he said, "It's a great story."
Oh, right.
I'm not sure if it's a great book yet. And the thing was, like, it was that dualistic moment where it was sort of like a shot in the heart, but he was telling me the truth, and I knew it. I knew he was telling me the truth. So I kind of like just got over my heartbreak instantly. And I said, well, and he said a couple of things, and I said, that's exactly what I think. And like, so I'm thinking, well, but if I think that, then why didn't I just do it?
Right.
But now it got me to do it, and then and then I could get it published, and it went along. But I know that moment. Okay, so let me ask you this: because you spend all this time in writing crime fiction, do you consult any law enforcement when you're doing research on your books?
Oh, very much. Yes. I have a good friend who we went to grade school together, actually, and he is a lieutenant in York City PD in Pennsylvania, and he helps me with pretty much everything, especially in the first draft. And then I just want to be, again, I want to go back when you say everything. Let's make that a little bit more granular. What do you mean exactly? So it could be anything from, I'll say to him, Josie, there's a abduction victim's car has been found on somebody's property. Right. And the team, Josie and her team, need to, recover and process the car. What do they need to do? Because I know they can't just walk onto or I assume they just couldn't walk onto the property, and I was right. And so he'll take me through the whole process. Well, you contact the owner first and try to get consent. If you can't get consent, then you need a warrant, right. He'll take me through the whole thing. So it can be anything from that, something as simple as that, to me saying, I need to get Josie, into this sticky situation. Is this possible? Right. And then he'll say, well, this is the way the law enforcement does it, and if you were going to write it authentically, these are the steps that she would need to take. Right.
So, and I've had a lot of crime authors on the show, and I've had a bunch of them were former law enforcement, and I've asked them, one of the things I really try to get at on the show is, tell me about how much is real, how much is made up, and ultimately, it's still art. We're just, no matter how real you're trying to be, let's face it, we're just making shit up and putting it on a page, and it's as real as I mean, look, how real is Law and Order? I mean, it's it's quasi real, but it's not real, and that kind of thing. So how important is to you? Is it important to you that you get that every single element of, let's say, the law enforcement component has to be spot on? Or do you say, well, I know that I know this is not the way it really works. I know it wouldn't go that way, but I don't care. It serves my story. I'm going to do it anyway.
I really try hard, very hard. And I would say 95% of the time to get it right. And for it to be authentic. I also have a consultant who was a female detective in Maryland for many, many years. She's retired now. She actually reads every book line by line before they go out. And she'll say to me, this is not really what that would look like. I think with the last book, there's a scene where Josie finds a body, and I had described it a certain way, and she said to me, that's not what that looks like when somebody dies like that.
Right.
And she said, but if you need to keep it that way for dramatic effect,
Right.
I don't think it would be that big of a deal. And so it's something like that. If it's just a description of somebody's face and I got it not 100%, then I'll leave it in there.
Right.
But I try really hard never to put in anything that somebody in law enforcement would read and go, oh my God, that's terrible. So I can't get it right all the time. Like actually the reason I started working with this consultant was because I had a mistake in one of the books in the way that Josie was holding her gun.
Right.
And this former detective emailed me and she said, I'm a big fan of your books. You get so much right, but this is just like a terrible mistake. And I was like, hey, do you want to be a consultant for me so I don't make these mistakes again?
Right.
And she was so gracious and so wonderful, and she's such a huge help now. So I feel like I can really get even more right now with these kind of folks on my side. Yeah.
I was at where was I? I was over the summer. I was at Crime Con up in Connecticut, and there's a lot of great authors there, and some of them were former law enforcement. And there was a conversation going on. My thought is, like, you see various TV shows, movies, and let's say there's shootouts, right? And of course, bullets are flying everywhere, and nobody gets hit.
Yeah, nobody gets hit.
Right. And I said, well, is that really how it is? And they said, yeah, that's how it is. Because what happens is your adrenaline is pumping, right? And if you think that you're just sitting there cool as a cucumber, and bullets are whizzing by, and glasses glasses shattering, and if there's a shootout, whether it's inside or outside, it's going through windows and walls, or you're literally ducking behind your car, and you think it's easy just to sort of like take a deep breath and stand up and like ignore the bullets and like get a clean shot from 30 feet away. That's not how it goes. I mean, you're just pumping bullets and hoping to save your life. So, and it's funny, a lot of that kind of stuff I didn't think. And one of the other things, and I had someone on the show last year, former police officer, and also had done some training with the FBI. I said, look, you see tons of movies, shows, whatever. Somebody gets shot, beat up, stabbed. And you're like, there's no way, like after they got a bullet in the shoulder or the gut or the leg, or they're stabbed or beaten, that they're going to get up and fight. She's like, no, that's not right. Your adrenaline and your survival instinct kicks in so hard that your body can actually, for a short time, can overcome that physical trauma, whether it's for minutes or longer or whatever. I mean, you might collapse afterwards, and but in that moment, and I was a little surprised. I didn't think that's always been one of my pet peeves. And it seems, I'm sure in certain cases it's just ridiculous.
Right.
Someone gets hit in the head with a crowbar. I don't care who you are. You're not getting up after that. But, but still, anyway. So that's all right. That's interesting. So I want to go back for a second. I understand that you were a martial arts instructor at one point. Is that right? Yes.
And so speaking of my stepdad, the former Navy SEAL,
Right.
I was in high school and I watched this Oprah, and it was a episode about rape victims. And after my mom and I watched it together, and it was horrible. It was devastating and terrifying. And I said to him, oh, I really want to take a self-defense course after this. And so he was like, okay. And then he just signed me up for martial arts. And then the next thing I know, I'm getting this black belt.
Was it karate, taekwondo?
It was Shido-Ryu karate, yes.
Okay.
And my instructor, Bob Tomato, he's just incredible. And such a profound influence on me as a person too. I mean, he was just so smart and so he's just incredible. He's retired now, but I mean, the stuff that he taught me, I really think has saved my life a couple of times. And
Wow.
he was just very hardcore,
Mm,
and you know, it was just so fantastic working with him. And then after I got my black belt, I was going to college. He was in Bloomsburg, and I was going to college there, and I started helping him teach the
mm.
children's classes, and then I just came on like as a regular instructor for his children's program. And those kids are all grown now. They're all having their own kids now.
Crazy. Wow. So let me ask you. So, I mean, I've taken some martial arts over the years. I wish I'd stuck with, I did some Kung Fu and Chinese kickboxing and Tai Chi. And actually one of the guys that I was taking Kung Fu from in his weight class. This guy he looked like Bruce Lee. I mean, he was 5'2", 106 pounds, and he picked me up and threw me across the room. Like I weighed like a tissue paper. He actually, in his weight class, he won the world championships, like in
Oh,
China or
wow.
something. And I was really into it for a while, but I hurt my back and my knee and I couldn't get into it. But let me ask you, having that kind of skill, do you still have the skill? Do you still practice at all?
I don't practice. I'm going to be honest. I've never found a dojo that I felt was as good as
Right.
Bob's
Right.
since I moved away. And I don't know. I mean, I imagine there are some things that are probably so deeply ingrained that in an adrenalized situation they might come out.
Right. The instincts might kick in.
Yeah, but I don't know.
Did that give you, but just having the skill either at that time or now, did it give you more confidence generally?
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Do you apply any of that to your books?
Yes, I apply a lot of the stuff.
Yeah.
The fight scenes are usually um all things that I learned from Bob.
Yeah.
Like, you know, Josie's not a huge person,
Right.
and she's a female, and one of the things that I learned from Bob was that for someone my size, if you're going up against a bigger opponent, which is pretty much all the time,
Hmm.
um, you actually want to stay in close to their body because they've got these long arms.
Arms. That's
You
right.
don't want their whole frame behind a punch,
That's right. You want to cut off the angle.
Yeah, and so to stay close, hit soft targets, that kind of thing. So, and we learned, pain compliance with some jujitsu stuff, arm bars, that kind of thing. And
Right.
so chokes, we learned chokes.
Right.
Uh, so all that stuff, if Josie's doing it, then I learned it from Bob.
All right. So quickly. So talk to me about Josie. You've written 15 books so far. So
Yeah.
give us for those of us who haven't read the books, just give us the rundown on who she is and her world and what the kind of trouble she gets into.
Oh, it's a lot of trouble. Um,
I love trouble.
she is a detective in a small, well, probably not so small anymore, but a small Pennsylvania city. I've made it up. The city is called Denton. It's somewhere in central Pennsylvania. Nobody knows exactly where.
Sure.
And she is the first female detective ever to be on the Denton police force. And she is written in Vanishing Girls as, this kind of flawed, very damaged, angry.
That's one right
Yeah.
here. They write that.
Yeah, a kind of angry person. In the first book, she's on suspension for the alleged use of excessive force. And so throughout the series, from case to case, she starts to grow as a person and kind of work through all of the issues that I gave her in the first book. So she starts out very tropey,
Right.
and then,
Right.
case by case, we work through a lot of those issues.
Right. Yeah. So I write an ongoing series as well, and the character has to evolve. It doesn't have to, but I like to see the evolvement over time. So if we were going to jump into the series, are they standalones? Can we read in any order, or do we really need to start at the beginning?
You can pick up any one of them and read it as a standalone. Each mystery stands on its own.
Right.
I would say, though, that there are a lot of things that happen amongst the series' regular characters
Right, of course.
that those things will mean more to you if you start in the beginning, but you really don't have to. I've had people pick it up at book 15 and they love it. So
Right. All right. So ultimately, are you more interested in telling a good mystery or focusing on character?
I think a good mystery. Yeah. Josie's very special to me and very important to me, and I like to challenge her and I like to see her grow, but I get really excited about the putting together the puzzle with each book.
I'm the same way. I'm actually a blend. I like both, but I have to say I've asked many people this question, and almost every single writer says they rather focus on character. Almost all of them. I don't know. I don't always believe them when they say it, but that's what they tell me. Okay. All right. That was great. But now it's a time for on the show, a special segment where we spin the wheel. On the wheel are 7 categories. Wherever it lands is what you get. And the categories are Play It Again, Sam, Stranger in a Strange Land, Cold Case, Music Lover, Quantum Leap, Desperately Dreaming, Dexter, and everyone's new favorite, Kick 'Em in the Junk. All right. You ready? I'm going to give it a spin, and wherever it lands is what you get. You ready? Uh-oh, the spinner snapped. All right. I'm going to have to fix that one later. All right. What do we got for you? We got, all right, Music Lover. Okay, so what song or piece of music do you love no matter how many times you hear it?
Oh, well, it would be Hold Me by Fleetwood Mac.
Oh, okay.
Actually, my ringtone. Yeah,
Is it really? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. You can't go wrong with some good Fleetwood Mac. All right. All right. So next we're going to do, all right, speaking of crime and mystery, now you're going to pick your poison. I got 3 options for you, A, B, or C. I'm not going to tell you what they are. Pick a letter and we'll see what you get.
Okay, B.
B. All right, that's rejection letter. All right, so the writing life is filled with rejection. What's your take on rejection and how do you handle it?
Well, my dad had this amazing little quirky saying that I have lived my life by, and it is, let them tell you no. And so for me, the idea was always to welcome rejection, because if you are getting rejected, then that means you're out there trying. And it's kind of like, it's like a challenge. Like, I'm going to make you tell me no. So I'm going to get out there. You're going to have to tell me no, or I'm not going away. And that's how I've always approached it. I mean, don't get me wrong. I was rejected by 154 agents. So like I had some depressing moments, but Regans are stubborn to like definitely a fault. So like a madness, it's madness. So that's how I when I think of rejection, I'm just like, I'm gonna make you tell me no.
All right, well, you beat me. When I got my first agent, I had 99 no's, and on the 100th one, I got a yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes. I don't have that agent anymore, but still. Okay. All right. So we're almost at the end. So now we're going to give you some truth serum. I got 10 questions for you. Answer quickly. You ready?
Okay.
Favorite flavor ice cream?
Oh, butter pecan.
Oh, mine too. Good for you. Pineapple on pizza, yay or nay?
Yes.
All right. Me too. Right on. Bucket list destination anywhere in the world?
The UK.
Scariest movie you ever saw?
The Vanishing with Sandra Bullock.
Okay. If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
To be invisible.
Get that a lot. All right. Do you play any musical instruments? And if not, which one if you could?
I do not. I would love to be able to play the guitar.
Oh, you mean like that thing over there? Okay. You can only have one. Good luck or skill?
Skill.
Okay. Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
You can see a live performance, sports, music, theater, whatever. Any seat, any venue. What's your choice?
Oh my goodness, that's really difficult. I think it has to be Fleetwood Mac, and probably in the pit at my regular local Wells Fargo Center.
I actually saw them at the Garden about 10 years ago. and it was interesting. It was without, oh my God, why am I?
Lindsay,
No, not Lindsay.
Christine.
Without Christine McVigue, because she was a while she didn't do it. And at the time I was like, well, all right. And I got to tell you, even though she maybe wasn't like, the star of the band, without her, they were not the same.
Oh yeah,
They just were. I mean, it's not that they were bad, they were good.
right.
It was an important missing ingredient. It's just sort of like, you can't make pizza without the sauce, right? It's
Yeah.
just not, it's not, right? So anyway, all right, last question. Within your lifetime, most impactful, where were you then moment?
No, I don't know. I guess the first thing that comes to mind is September 11th. I was actually in the mayor's office in Bloomsburg. I was interning, and it's like everybody says, you heard, oh, a plane crashed into one of the Twin Towers, and you thought, oh, it's just a little propeller plane, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, I was in Manhattan that day. I remember
Oh
it
my
well.
God.
All right, so we're going to take some questions from the audience. Let's see what we got here. All right, welcome to meet you. Looking forward to reading your books. Okay, question: favorite crime movie, TV series, and book, both fact and fiction. In other words, crime procedural or true crime series.
That's tough, because I don't like my all-time. The first two movies that come to mind which are both reboots, The Italian Job with Mark Wahlberg, and He Was So Clever, and
I just rewatched that recently, actually.
yeah, it's awesome. And
it was fun.
Man on Fire with Denzel Washington.
Anna, wow, I haven't seen that. That was with the kid, like the little girl, right?
Yeah, the little girl. Oh, it was fantastic. I love Denzel Washington.
Well, come on, what's not to love? I know. I'm due for I gotta watch that one again, because I just remember the girl, and I remember some scene by the pool. I don't remember anything else about it. I think I need to go back and give it another go. All right, so there was another question I didn't get a chance to ask you earlier, which I meant to. So when you were younger and you were reading, you mentioned a bunch of Nancy Drew, and you kind of moved on from there. So when you write, are there particular authors that you sort of, like I have a bunch of books that to me are sort of like my Bibles. When I'm stuck or confused, I can open up to a random page and I go, oh yeah, okay, now, and I gets my mojo going, right?
Yeah.
Do you have any authors or books that sort of stick with you that says, you know what, when I just kind of need to sort of like wade back into the waters to make sure that I'm sort of in that headspace? Do you have any that sort of live in your little personal Bible cabinet?
Yes, I read a Chelsea Kane book before I start every one of my books.
Chelsea Kane, I don't know her work.
She wrote the Archie Sheridan Gretchen Lowell series. And then I also will sometimes listen to a Karen Slaughter book on audio before I start. And they're both pretty much procedurals. But I also will, one of my all-time favorite authors ever is Greg Hurwitz. So sometimes I'll listen to an Orphan X book before I start.
Okay. All right. Right on. All right. So we have a couple more minutes, and I want to make up for some little lost time from before. So I don't usually do this, but I want to give everyone a chance to sort of get a little extra. All right. So we're going to go back. I have two more questions for you. All right. We're going to go back, and we're going to find out if you got thick skin. So as writers, so when we put our work out there and ourselves, criticism of all kind comes with it, the good, the bad, and everything in between. How do you feel about reviews? Do you take them to heart? Do you let them roll off you? Do some stick with you more than others?
Well, so my number one thing I want to say about reviews is that the negative reviews give you credibility. So I'm always looking like, listen, I love the great reviews. They're like a writer's lifeblood, but I'm kind of not happy till I get my first 1 or 2 star review, because then I feel like it's okay, this is credible now. Right. Not everybody's going to like everything. That's the reality. As a reader, I would never read something that had only 5-star reviews and no criticism.
Right. It's a plan.
Right. Yeah. I just feel like if I see even a book that has a pretty large percentage of bad reviews, or or even if they're equal, then I'm like, oh, I really want to read this to make up my own mind.
Mm, interesting. Okay.
So I don't really take them to heart. I mean, every so often there's one that if I'm having a really bad day,
Mm,
it'll get under my skin, but most of the time I'm just like, okay.
mhm. All right, fair enough. All right, one more. All right, so let's go to our advice column, right? There's a lot of writers out there who are doing it, and writers who people are trying to be writers. So what's the best and worst piece of writing advice you've ever gotten?
Oh, wow. I think the best, and this is going to sound really silly, but the best piece of advice I've ever gotten is just to keep writing. You should just always be writing. You should always be practicing. You should always be honing your craft. You should always be putting words on the page somehow in some form, even if it's emails. It doesn't matter. So just write. If you're a writer, you should be writing. That's the best piece of advice I've ever gotten. The worst piece of advice, oh, I don't know. That's tough because I feel like most advice has some little nugget in it that you can use. Oh, well, I guess it's not a piece of advice, but I see this a lot, which is that writers will start with one thing, maybe a crime novel, and then they'll do a romance novel, and then they'll do a Western, and I feel like if all you're looking to get out of this is just the joy of writing, that's totally fine. But if you're looking to build a career, I feel like you're better served by picking one genre and doing a few titles in that genre before you dabble elsewhere.
Fair enough. All right, one last question that just came in. Who would you cast as Josie Quinn for an animated or live action series?
Well, my choice right now, and it's changed over time, but my choice right now is Victoria Pedretti. And
Oh, no.
yeah, she's in that show You in seasons 2 and 3. And I think she was in The Haunting of Hill House.
Okay.
She very much looks like Josie to me. But I always say this is that to me, it's not so much the appearance to me as it is the quality that Josie has. So it would have to be somebody that could carry off that kind of stubborn, gritty,
Nice.
but also vulnerable.
Someone who can embody the spirit of the character.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay. All right, guys, we're getting close to the end. I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to see what kind of good stuff. Hopefully, I won't make this technical mistake, but let's see how we do. Okay, so what do we got? Talk to me.
Oh, this is her final confession. It is actually number 4 in the series, but you can definitely read it as a standalone. And my publisher of the series is Bookstore, and they're under the Hachette umbrella. And when the books started to do really, really well, they made a deal with Grand Central Publishing to publish new editions in paperback and distribute them to stores. So this is the new edition of book 4 with a new super badass cover that is now in stores.
Very, very cool. Very, very cool. Well, congratulations on that. I mean, that's quite an accomplishment, and it should be applauded, which I'm going to do.
Thank you.
Right now. All right, that's great. And do you have another Josie book coming?
I don't have a title or cover yet for the one that's coming in December, but just in, I think it was August, book 15 came out. It's called Local Girl Missing.
And what's your plan? Are you sort of like, this is like Josie forever, or do you have an end date? Like, what's your thought here?
Oh, well, I was contracted for a total of 20 books.
Oh, okay.
Of which I'm on 16. And then I just signed a new contract for 15 more.
Oh, okay.
And yeah.
I guess you guys are going to be spending some time together.
Yeah, so it's going to be all Josie all the time.
All right. Well, good for you. All right. Well, that's great. Thanks, Lisa. I've got Vanishing Girls. I'm going to read it, and hopefully I'm going to gobble up all the rest. All right. So as for me, if you're up for a little twist with your private eye fiction, I'd encourage you to check out my sci-fi noir Hot Ash, the third book in my ongoing series featuring hard-boiled private detective Angela Hardwick. To my mind, she's part Blade Runner, part Philip Marlowe, and while she may or may not agree, I see Hardwick as the spiritual cousin to J.D. Robb's In Death series. In Hot Ash, Hardwick is hired by a middle-aged widow who claims that her stepkids stole her deceased husband's real estate empire from her, as was written into the original will, and wants help getting it back. But the investigation leads Hardwick to uncover a new form of cocaine and a majestic domed city covering up a horrifying secret. Hot Ash is available on Amazon and published by Crazy 8 Press. And if you want a signed copy, you can order them directly from me. Okay. All right. Well, that's our show. I want to thank Lisa for coming on and spending some time with us. And I want to thank everyone for your patience. I apologize for the technical snafu. Totally my fault. I'll rectify it in the going forward. And if you want to see me in person, I will be at the KGB bar next week in Lower Manhattan, Tuesday, October 11th, for a reading I'll be doing of Hot Ash through the Mystery Writers of America. And I'll be at PhilCon in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, the weekend of November 18th through 20th. So as always, until then, I will see you all next week. Thanks a lot, everyone. Take care. All right.